Hello, I'm Fran Foster, past master of Setauket Lodge in East Bridgewater. Welcome to our 28th program in a continuing series of what it means to be a Mason. I have the pleasure today to have with me Most Worshipful Fred K. Bauer, Grand Master of Masons in Massachusetts. Welcome to our program.
Good afternoon, Fran.
You came from Missouri, I believe. I read in your history somewhere.
That's right. I was born and raised in St. Louis, Missouri, went to school, college out in St. Louis, got married, and had our daughters, two of our three, from the St. Louis area.
Mm-hmm. Then you moved to Massachusetts?
Moved with Massachusetts with one of the companies I had been with in actually 1965, with becoming a Mason in 1968.
Excellent. So you became a Mason in Massachusetts. You weren't a Mason in Missouri?
No, I wasn't. I was a DeMolay in Missouri.
DeMolay, all right.
Had been all the officers and continued to be with DeMolay for many years in St. Louis.
Oh, good, good. Now, you've been a master of a lodge, obviously.
I have. North Reading Lodge in North Reading.
North Reading.
In 1974, 75.
And you were a past district deputy?
I sure was. Served under Anothr Masonic in 79 and Phil Berquist in 1980. Enjoyed both of those years. Malden, 7th Masonic District.
Okay. And from my reading of the history, you're also a Shriner?
I am. Shriner. Joined Aleppo Temple in 1980 and shortly thereafter became, in one of their units, the Clown Unit, known as Kirby the Clown.
Kirby the Clown, yes. I had heard that somewhere. Can you tell us some of the history of Masonry? I know Masonry started in Massachusetts in 1733, but it was around a lot longer than before that, and nobody seems to have any permanent records of what happened and when it happened.
Oh, it goes way back. There were Masons in the building of King Solomon's Temple. King Solomon was one of our past Grand Masters. The guilds were formed, and there were building of the temples and then on to the cathedrals and the Colosseums and through Europe. It moved through history. And finally then they were known as speculative and operative, but there were not anyone that had not been actually used their hands in masonry. Mm-hmm. So then an organization became, and still part of the Masons, but started to use the various symbols that were used by the actual operative Masons. And they, in the turn around in England, they became known and formed a Grand Lodge, and therefore we always look to our mother Grand Lodge as that coming from England. Then it moved across into Ireland, and there were number 2, and then, as you mentioned, in 1733, Henry Price was commissioned to come to America, and he formed what was then known as the Grand Lodge of Massachusetts in 1733. There had been lodges meeting in America. They had come over for quite a long time, but there had not been a formed Grand Lodge prior to 1733. Mm-hmm. But Masons used to meet in taverns and out in the hills and the vales. We didn't have all the beautiful temples that we have today, but they met for social, as many of our lodges do. They met for a good time. They met for trying to better themselves and their families and to take care of each other. We have had such a rich history in Massachusetts. My goodness, going back, we've had past Grand Masters. Paul Revere was a Grand Master of Massachusetts. Joseph Warren was a past Grand Master of Massachusetts. Joseph Warren actually was the Grand Master at the time when he fell in the Revolution.
At Bunker Hill?
Reed's Hill.
Reed's Hill, okay.
We now respectfully know it as Bunker Hill. That's where the monument is. And we're quite proud of that whole episode. The National Park Society has just asked the Masons, they are going to, with federal money that's being renovated, and the movie that many people have watched and seen, The Whites of Their Eyes, they've asked, they want to update it, they want to bring it up to modern state of the art, and they've asked the Masons, and we are going to sponsor the new movie that will be shown at the new museum at the Bunker Hill Monument. The U.S. Constitution was designed and built by many Masons at the time. The first Secretary of United States, Major General Knox, he was a Mason. And of course, several of the captains aboard the ship, including John Paul Jones, he was a famous Mason. We have a lot of their relics in our Grand Lodge building down at Boston. We have a beautiful museum open to the public, libraries open to the public. You might be interested to know we have a lot of students from all over the world that come and study American Revolution history as well as much of the other history. Students from MIT, Harvard are constantly coming down to our library, and Masons certainly can use that library for their own enjoyment as well as research. Cynthia Alcorn, our librarian, is actually known throughout the world as one of the most noted authors of Masonic literature, and we're very fortunate to have her on our staff.
I had her and Michael Comeback on one of my shows.
Oh, did you?
Yes,
Wonderful.
Yes, they did a good show. Now, I'm doing some reading lately, and it was Masonic reading, of course, and I find that a lot of the forming of our Constitution in our country is based on Masonic principles, like the separation of religion and state, for one. And there are many other Masonic teachings that are kind of embedded in our laws and rules as they went along.
Well, that's not strange when you really stop to think that so many of the founding fathers were all Masons. They believed in principles of freedom. They believed in a country. America, I mean, we would now say they believed in America, but America was just being formed. They had come from a lot of tyranny, from not just England, but I mean from other parts of the world. Religion was very important to them, but not a religion. They received that in their Masonic teachings, because as you know, I mean, many people confuse the Masonic fraternity, and they'll even accuse us of being a religion. We're anything but a religion. But a man must believe in a supreme being. Many people are interested to know that on our Bible, on our altars, there is an altar and there is a Holy Bible. It could be the King James Version, but it could be the Torah. It could be the Gita. It could be the Hindu, the Quran. It could be any of Buddhist work, as long as you believe in a supreme being.
Many of the readings will say VSL, Volume of Sacred Law. The volume of sacred law to that person, whatever it may be.
Well, we believe in that, and it's a prerequisite of becoming a Mason, because we feel that to be a good man and true, you must have something that you believe in, something greater than yourself, a supreme being. Mm-hmm. Some of the churches have problems with that. They will, they want us to particularly be a one doctrine or one faith. We tolerate all faiths. And at times, the Masonry, the fraternity has gone under attack by different churches for that very reason. Different religions or different people will say, well, you only believe one way. Not so. We don't try to teach any man a belief. He must do that on his own.
Or politics.
Or politics. Oh, well, that's a good one. I love to use that because we actually, in our regulations, say there will be no discussion of politics.
All religion
within the lodge.
Within the lodge, right.
But only because we don't want to cite the mirth. We don't want, say, that Democrats, Republicans to be arguing with each other or promoting a particular candidate. But can you imagine Paul Revere and John Warren and, say, John Hancock and Benjamin not talking politics?
Right.
Of course they did. And so do Masons today.
But they talk as individuals.
They talk as individuals. We have selectmen, we have mayors, we have senators, we have governors. Very strong. In fact, one of the basic parts of Masonry, there can be no even thought or hint of trying to overthrow the government. Work within our government. Treason is very big, not just in America, but if you were a Mason in Europe, in France, and throughout Asia, in Africa, all of our Grand Lodges, murder and treason are two crimes we cannot tolerate. All the rest, we will certainly look and act upon.
Back in the revolutionary times, I've been reading lately that there is much speculation that the Indians of the Boston Tea Party were not Indians.
Well, history has recorded that several times, but let me tell you that the night of that occurrence, the Lodge of St. Andrew is known to have met, and they went from labor to recess. And some of them may have put on some costumes and may have gone and drifted down and perhaps got a little ambitious with the tea. It is recorded again in our library. When they returned, a good time was had by all and the lodge was closed.
Yeah, Freemasonry is replete with history going way, way, way back. And it is a beautiful organization of symbols that teaches friendship, morality, and brotherly love. And it's all over the world.
Sure is. I have just recently, my wife and I returned from our lodges in Panama. And it was so wonderful we also visited with the Grand Lodge of Panama and the Grand Master, and there was such a warmth. And we had the Grand Lodge of Scotland represented, we had the Grand Lodge of England, had a lodge in Panama, and our three lodges. And when I was attending the Grand Lodge of Panama, it was all in Spanish. And I had an interpreter, and he had an interpreter. And my whole message was, isn't this wonderful, the universality of Masonry, where we can come together, we have differences, we speak a different language, we have a different face at the time, but we're Masons. We're meeting together. We had a wonderful time having at the meeting, and then our wives and such were socializing, and we went out for dinner together. This is what Masonry is all about.
You can go anywhere in the world and find this friendship.
Yes, you can. We have been with the Grand Masters Conference. We just recently returned from Savannah, Georgia. The North American Conference represents 64 different jurisdictions. That gets a little confusing, but there's Canada, and there's Mexico, and all the Grand Masters of each different province, as well as all the ones from the United States. And we meet we have several programs. We have the George Washington Monument, and just recently that has had the beautiful square and compass symbol, which you can see every time you fly out of any of the Washington airports now, and that monument was dedicated to George Washington, a beloved father and president of the United States, I understand. But he was also a past master of Alexander Lodge in Virginia. He served there. He was a Mason and a master while he served as president of the United States. Some interesting notes, he used to come to Boston quite often. He and his lovely bride, Martha, they enjoyed and were coming to visit because of many of his generals and many of his soldiers, but they would have Masonic, he would attend Masonic meetings. It is recorded. And he was so loved in Boston area that even when he passed away, Martha brought herself to Boston and came and appeared before the Grand Lodge and presented a lock of hair of her husband in memory of the wonderful friendship between George Washington and several of the officers at the time in our Grand Lodge. To this day, when we install the new Grand Master, the Deputy Grand Master carries a very beautiful urn of gold wrought by Paul Revere. He did more than just silver. Mm-hmm. And inside is a lock of hair of Brother George Washington. And it's a very, very priceless relic that we have, and we have several like that. And I remember our Sovereign Grand Commander, Paul Ralston, just recently had the Grand Commanders from all over Europe come to, and they were hosted here in Boston. And I invited them to come through our museum and library. And while we were doing it, we were demonstrating several things. John Paul Jones' personal pistol, the lock of hair. We have President Garfield, a lock of hair, also because of the strong ties. And items like that. And they kept saying, "You have that?" And it's all on display in our museum. Yes, we do.
I am on several Masonic email lists. and I'm talking with Masons all over the world. And it's amazing how different Masonry is in different portions of the world. The concept is all the same, but the method of getting there is different. Different rituals.
That's right. Every jurisdiction is allowed, and always has been. I mean, a lot of people think this is new. Not so. Even in time back, every jurisdiction, and at the time it was a country, was allowed to have their own type of initiation, own type of ritual. But there's landmarks. Now, some have 5 landmarks, others have 15 landmarks. We happen to have 7. But landmarks such as believing in a supreme being, landmarks believing in monotheism, landmarks that are no one can change, not even a Grand Master. And each jurisdiction then governs by those landmarks. Each jurisdiction has their own constitution, has their own bylaws, that's written by their own members. We have several changes to our Grand Lodge currently on being debated and proposed at this very moment. These came from the members. They're very excited. Can't tell you the results because it will come up in June in our quarterly, where the Master and Wardens will be the actual ones that will vote on these type of. And it's good that it's that way. It takes 2/3 to vote them in and pass. So the Master and Wardens, and there's been a lot of discussion within lodges, how do they want it? One has to do with lowering the age limit. Currently it says male adult. Never did say 21. All in the history of Massachusetts. We've just defined it as being 21. Some of the masters would like to lower it to 19. That's one of the proposals. And that's how we change our Grand Constitution.
Well, back in the early times of Masonry in Massachusetts, 21 was the legal age. But since that time, it's been dropped. A man is eligible to vote at the age of 18. He's eligible to go out and fight and die for his country, which many have. Well, all right, so what is the legal age? It was defined many years ago as 21.
There was, right.
So that's where it's stuck. And we're talking about changing it to 18. There is some talk about demolay. When a person gets to be 18, he doesn't go to demolay as much, and you kind of lose track of them between 18 and 21.
There is some concern, and I have that concern. I wouldn't want to do anything that hurt demolay. I'm a senior demolay myself. But there are those demolays who are in college locally that stay within their chapter and they strengthen it. Our state officers are all in that 18 and 19 up to 21 age. I don't think they'll change, but where I'm really addressing, that's a very hard time in every young man's life, anywhere from 18 to 21. He's no longer a child, he's not a teenager, and yet he's not a man yet. And we need to make sure that the concepts of freedom, of religion, of America, believing in your country, believing in right and wrong, is something that he will live with the rest of his life. I want to make that opportunity available to him as a Mason.
Yep. Sounds like a good idea. Or the teachings that we have, teaching what is right and what is wrong. This is basically what Masonry is.
Absolutely.
Right?
We try to take good men, I mean very good men. They go through quite a investigation just to find out they're going to become brothers for the rest of their lives and be part of that lodge. We want to make sure they are what they say they are. We do check references. But every man has parts of his life that need to be improved. That's where Mason, that's what all the pins we wear and on our emblems on our cars. They're a constant reminder of what those symbolisms are that we're teaching in our lodge meetings.
Well, the square and compasses with the G in the center is a perfect reminder of the principles of Masonry.
Absolutely. And it's to teach Masons every time they see that, walk on the square, be true. Brotherhood, relief, and truth. truth is so important in today's age. I believe America is looking, it needs different, stronger morale values. The Masonic fraternity has had it for centuries. We need to constantly bring that before mankind, because not everybody's going to become a Mason, and we understand that. And if 98% of the population know nothing about us, that's our fault. We need to teach them, we need to tell them really and truly what Masons are, and definitely on the other side, what we are not.
There's a lot of people out there who are good and true, Masons in their heart, but they haven't joined the fraternity yet.
We're looking for them.
We're looking for them. We've got two that we just entered an apprentice degree on.
Wonderful.
And one of the things that I plan on saying to them once they have the Master's of Mason's degree is that, you know, they could get all the titles in the world, even the title of Grand Master, but there is nothing more important than Brother Master Mason.
Absolutely. I tell many people, don't go by your titles. Don't go by what we wear, whether we're in the tux or we're in the different Grand Lodge officers' morning clothes and all the various titles. They're important, but only in the lodge room. It's what's in here. That's, and how we display that, how we take care of mankind, how we work with the age, how we work with our children. That's what Masonry is all about. All our charities. My goodness, Masons are the largest single contributor to philanthropy in the world. We're the oldest fraternity in the world. The contributions of cash of $2 million a day, in fact it's approaching $2.5 million, is just phenomenal. In all of the various, between our Scottish Rite Masons and the learning centers throughout the north and southern jurisdictions. We have 3 within Massachusetts for dyslexia children. We have the York Rite Foundations and the I Templars Foundation. We have our Shrine Hospitals. We have 2 that we're so proud of within Massachusetts, both in Boston and Springfield, with the Burns Institute, known throughout the world, and our orthopedic unit over in Springfield. These are all Masonic, sponsored, totally free of charge to the people. We don't go to insurance companies, we don't look for any government subsidies. It's sponsored by the Masons. We have a lot of women's organizations within our fraternity. A lot of people say, well, you don't allow women into the fraternity. We don't allow women into the Blue Lodge, but we have Daughters of the Nile, we have Eastern Star, we have a lot of different organizations, subdivisions of the basic Masonic fraternity, which have both husband and wife.
Tall Cedars of Lebanon is one of them.
Absolutely. Our young people, Rainbow Girls for the young ladies, DeMolay for the young men. We're doing scholarships. We are so proud of the scholarships that we're now doing for children. We gave out 35 $5,000 scholarships last year, and we're ready to administer that again. Those were new scholarships over and above the ones that we already have ongoing. And usually once they have to reapply, but it's $5,000 for 4 years. So the 35 were new scholarships over
Excellent.
and above. We also, our CHIP program, child identification, this is in its 3rd year. We have teamed up with the American Dental Society, the National Mass Crime Prevention Society. We do fingerprinting, we do tooth prints, an invention by a mass dentist. We've done about 53,000 children now, but I'm excited because Mayor Menendez has just invited us into the Boston school system. We have the approval in New Bedford and to start there. We're doing it in Brockton. We've gone out to Springfield. In the fall, we will be in all those schools. We allow the school committee to tell us which grades they would like, and this is all sponsored, again, free of charge by the Masons.
Well, the tooth print that you mentioned, that also captures the DNA.
Yes, it does. That came to us sort of new. The FBI at the Yankee Dental just in January, they came in and made a presentation second to ours. We were discussing it because we weren't aware that this was available, and an FBI officer did get up and said they are now convinced, based on several samplings, that the DNA testing just by the saliva taken out of the child's mouth just very briefly in the mouth while the tooth impressions are being made, that is enough that they can give it to a trained dog for finding that child. And we're excited. This could open this up even greater than we've anticipated.
Very nice. It's the most comprehensive program in the world.
Yes, it is.
What else do we have coming along in Freemasonry that is exciting? Anything you can tell us about?
We are starting to do many different programs for the community. We're leading on the edge of several national programs. There's a national children's program we're looking into. We are working with several of the historical societies based on new programs.
I know that the Masons are the largest single collectors of blood in the state of Massachusetts.
Absolutely. In fact, that's kind of surprising. Not that we're the single largest, but that the Red Cross is recognized so often. We are the largest contributors. I mean, we have a lot of blood sites all over Massachusetts, but the Red Cross has recognized us that for a number of years. I might mention, too, because a lot of people may be interested, as Grand Master, I have 7 other countries that I'm Grand Master over. We have lodges in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, in 1 there, 3 in Chile, 3 in Panama, actually 3 in Japan, meeting in Tokyo. We have 2 in China. And how those all came about, servicemen, as they traveled around during various wars, would write back and say, we'd like to form a lodge. So we granted them the permission, and they're still meeting.
And these are all chartered under the Massachusetts Grand Laws?
Yeah, that's right.
Wow, that's interesting.
We have 276 lodges, totally 253,000 Masons at this present time.
That's a lot of Masonry.
It's a lot of Masonry.
Yeah. How many Masons are there estimated in the country?
I guess. I think it's 2.6 million within our area. In North America, it's about 4 million, and worldwide, it's just over 10 million Masons.
Very good. And I know I can go anywhere in the world and be accepted as a brother.
Yes, you can. That's one of the nice things about being a Mason. You're a worldwide first-class fraternity.
Most Worshipful, it's been a pleasure having you on our show.
It's nice being with you, Fran.
Thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
appearing.
My pleasure.